think anybody who's in a selling role is predisposed for whatever reason to give a lot away,
Mhm.
to give away a lot of intellectual property without understanding fully what's going to happen with that information now that I've given it to you. So the friendly buyer is dangerous, and because it plays on all of our emotions, we get excited about this. We're acknowledging that buyers, they have the right to do a lot of different things. They have the right to price shop, they have a right to ask all kinds of questions, but so do we. There's no coaching. Instead of feedback, I want leaders embrace this word, hear me.
Hey, Hailey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Can't complain. Getting hot. It's summertime.
Oh,
AC doesn't work, and we're chatting about this,
oh,
so
it's
it's a little hot.
a hot day and hot topics, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Good to see you again. It's a pleasure, having you on the show. So, why don't you, introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I reside here in Boston, Massachusetts. Go Celtics, go Red Sox, all the things. I am president of Next Level Inc. We've been around for 30 years. We're a Sandler training company. We've been part of the Sandler network for all of those 30 years, and we're one of the top 10 franchises in the world. So it's pretty exciting. I'm the president of the company, and I've been doing this for the last 2 decades now. Trained hundreds of people, lots of different companies, lots of different industries, and it's been quite the ride. A lot of fun.
I bet, another founder to another. I'm
Yeah.
sure, it's been a fun journey. So, how did you end up in sales? Let me ask you this.
Well, it's a funny story. I think we all have these funny circle moments, full circle moments, if you will. But I went to school and got my master's degree in public policy. And I wanted to be an elected official, believe it or not. I thought politics was my jam. That's what I wanted to do. And my first job out of grad school was a sales job. So imagine that. And my dad was the founder of this company, and I worked for other people and worked in other jobs. I worked for a PR firm. I worked for another consulting firm. And then one day I came to him and said, Dad, I know you really love what you do. I don't really know what you do, but I love this thing called sales and I want to work with you. And that's how it all began. And the full circle moment for me with the politics piece is I ended up marrying someone who's in politics.
That's great. Best of both worlds. Okay, that's pretty interesting. So, let's talk about your focus. I know you guys work with a lot of service-based companies, and I wanted to ask this question because many of our listeners or audience are from B2B SaaS, they're technology companies. I want to get some insight around like what's actually happening outside of SaaS or B2B technology sales. What's really going on in the market? Are they facing the similar challenges, or they're dealing with some other stuff that we are not aware of?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. We've worked with probably, oh gosh, I don't know, companies in 85 different industries. And
Wow.
over the years, we've gravitated towards more professional service organizations,
Mm.
consulting firms, engineering firms, CPA firms, banks, financial institutions. And we always say the people who didn't go to school to be in sales. So that's really been our niche, our niche, however you line up with that word. But it's a fun group of people and a really interesting mix of companies. But when I think about their top challenges, and I'd love to hear from your perspective on the SaaS world, is they think about who's next. And they have these big companies and they come to us when they're doing a lot of great things. It's not like they come to us and say, Haley, help us, we're broken. It's help us because we've got great things going on. We have great services. We have great people. We've built a heck of a brand. We have people all over the place. But when the CEO or the managing partner look around, they begin to say, who's going to be able to bring in business after we leave? And it's a steep cliff, and there's a lot of concern, a lot of fear about what we're going to do about that and what's our process and who are we as a company and did what we do and sell and say 30 years ago, does that still resonate today? So I think some of those are the things that are on the minds of CEOs and managing partners and leaders of firms outside the SaaS space. But I'd love to know too in this discussion, do you find that same thing facing SaaS companies and tech companies too? I've got to believe there's a thread.
That's a great insight, and I think with SaaS companies, really depending on the size of the company, stage of the company, I would say like me being a SaaS founder, at some point, I have to take a step back and say, hey, someone needs to come and run the show. Things after founder-led sales obviously need some change if we are looking at proper growth, right? But I can only talk about the companies or clients we are serving. And what I see across the board from mid-market to enterprise companies, especially in B2B SaaS, is the fact that people don't hit quota. Simple as that. And why? Because many changes in macroeconomics that we are looking at, and also, what's happening with AI. Everybody's like trying to figure out like what's really next for them in that space that is growing extremely fast. But if we get really to the core of it, we notice that look, most of sellers in the space, they used to sell products. So they're really good at learning about ins and outs of the product. Hey, we have this functionality, we have this feature. And right now they need to switch to more consultative sales because many things can be literally outsourced. Of course, AI is really not there to take all complex conversations and calls, but if you see with inbound, it's the possibility is already it's there. Like we can really automate it. So they want to be relevant. This sales leader want to make sure that they actually apply AI to their organizations while keeping their talent, or maybe just give them more opportunities to have human and AI working hand in hand. But again, based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, is the fact how to even restructure the way we are running our sales organizations, because there are a lot of competitors popping up every day. So technology is not a mode anymore. How should we actually be relevant even at later stages so we don't lose clients? So I'm very curious. It sounds like again with professional services, it's a little bit different because you still build those relationships and maybe the dynamic with your clients are different. But I want to hear your perspective on this.
I think that's so interesting because what that says is what we say all the time. And I've heard the CEO of Sandler say many times is that there still is this very human element, regardless of technology, regardless of AI. We know that there's a human element to selling. And more and more and more is continued to be required of us in that role, whatever our title is. We could be working for a consulting firm or we could be working for a tech company.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, more is required of you. And I think more is required of us from the sense of being able to run an efficient process, being able to be someone who can communicate really, really, really well, ask great questions, be prepared. I mean, those may sound so simple to you listening or to even us in this conversation, but I think that there's a lost art and science to being a great communicator. And I fear that. I worry about that. And I think when, like I said, the CEOs, managing partners, presidents of firms are worried about who's next and who can generate business, I think deep inside that is who is able to lead an effective conversation and can get somebody talking in a meaningful and purpose way and sharing what's on their mind beyond surface level problems or needs or wants or desires. I mean, I think that takes real art and practice, and I don't find many people are really working on their craft like they should of the conversation.
This is really interesting because you brought up a great point. Do we even really care to call this our craft or a specialty and say, hey, we are a practitioner? Or we just got into sales because maybe the cost of entry was so low and the options, were so limited. We said, all right, let's give this thing a call, sales a try, and maybe it sticks, stick around. And to your point, look at all professionals out there. It could be athletes, it could be, I don't know, doctors or whoever. They practice. They practice. You're not going to go do a open heart surgery without knowing what you're doing, right? So you have to go through this. And with sales, historically, if you look at it, it's it best. It's been missing. And whether we say, hey, it's the bandwidth that managers don't have, or it doesn't make any sense. It's not very relevant to our actual client conversations. So practice, I think, is one of the things that are missing. but I wanted to hear your perspective. When you enter to these companies, as you said, things are working, but they want to do more, they want to do better, they want to be relevant. First and foremost, what's your go-to day one move when you look at someone's pipeline? And what practice actually does when you look at the pipeline problem across the board?
I think that there's so many things to be said about that. But when we go into a company or we begin in the early stages of working with someone and they say, hey, here's our pipeline, here's what we have. My first question is, well, what's the process that led to these things being in the pipeline? Like, how did they end up here? And that's often, I get a lot of like glazed over, everybody's looking at each other in the room like, well, what does she mean process? They just ended up there. Somebody
Mm,
thought that was a good idea, or
mm,
somebody asked us for a proposal, so we just sent one out. Or, well, what do you mean? We've known them forever, and they said they're going to make a decision, so they've been on the pipeline for a really long time. There really is no common like
thing.
agreements as a firm, as a company, about what makes for an opportunity on the pipeline. I think that's been an eye-opening experience for companies to be able to say, what is our process for something entering onto the pipeline? We know what buyers, their process is. We probably could recite each of our customers' process, but if we asked everyone in our company what our process is, I'm guessing that answer would be very different. And I interview everybody when we start working with a firm. I interview everybody and ask them 4 or 5 questions. And one of them is, who are you? What do you sell? And what's your process? And you would be amazed at the kind of information that comes back. It's all over the place.
So you must probably get different answers from four
Yeah.
different reps.
Yeah. From reps, from VPs,
You
from
know,
managing partners. I mean, they're all saying something different. And probably that's probably not a good thing.
what you said is actually really cool because you said they know the buying process. So it sounds like one of the major problems I'm seeing, at least in B2B SaaS, we actually don't know the buying process. We have, medic and mid-pick and framework and all these things figured out. Stage one, you do your discovery, then you send them to demo. But it sounds like with companies that you work with, they already understood the buying process, maybe because they've been around for a long time and we're not looking at hyper growth startups that got somewhere in a year or two, but they don't have a process. Is that the correct assumption?
Yeah, it's sort of flipped, right?
Yeah.
It's we know that buyers, they'll say engineering firms, consulting firms, whatever, they'll say, well, the process is they're going to tell us they need 3 quotes, and so we're one of 3, or they're going to have us line up to these many meetings, or this many rounds of interviews, or they can quote that very clearly. But yeah, when it comes to their internal process, it's like, well, no, we just do what, if they ask us to do that's what our process is to play into whatever the buyer has asked of us. It's pretty interesting, right? So you begin to think about, well, where is their alignment, and where's their gap? Where is that not working, for the professional? It'd be like going to the doctor and saying, hey doc, I have a rash on my arm. I really need a prescription. And the doctor's saying, sure, no problem. I'll send you 4 or 5. Let me know which one works. Like that doesn't work. They say, no, we have a process. You have to come in. It's frustrating as heck, but they run a process, right? And so I think for companies that are in a lot of different stages, even new ones, established ones, is taking a look at what is the process that you have. Are we in agreement? Is that relevant? Is that still the right process to get us where we want to go? And what needs to change?
This is super interesting. You know why? Because to me, it sounds like this company's already, have a good idea or sense of how to move the deals, but then deals get stuck at some point because they kind of like maybe order take, I don't know if it's a lack of a better word, and then they just react to what the buyer is asking for. So what happens next? Like, let's say discovery runs poorly because we don't ask the right questions, and then what happens next? Like, where do you see the gap? Is it right after, let's say, discovery, or they get to maybe a demo? Or
Yeah, I think I think salespeople in all industries, and you tell me if I'm wrong about the SaaS world, because that's where your expertise lies. So I don't want to misquote, but I think anybody who's in a selling role is predisposed for whatever reason to give a lot away.
Hmm.
to give away a lot of intellectual property, to give away a lot of information without understanding fully what's going to happen with that information now that I've given it to you. Because buyers know that if I can work somebody and they can give me a lot of information, what do I need this person for anymore? And
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. And I think in sort of your more professional services world, that plays on their headspace in a different way because they feel like, well, wait a minute, my expertise is really valued. They're coming to me. They want to see what we can do. They want to see the drawings. They want to see the specs. They want to see the way we would build the building, and that plays on our sort of intellectual enjoyment as a professional. I think those of us in the tech world, because we have had tech clients and more SaaS related companies, their challenge is more about making sure we're not, as the seller, selling for our reasons.
Hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. You're very on point. I'm laughing because this stat just came out, and it's like 70% of buyers don't want to talk to B2B SaaS companies. They can go buy their own thing, like Amazon. Just go on your website, and hopefully PLG Motion is the way to go. So we have to, we have to, add value. We have to show that we are different. And I get your point. You can do all of that and be treated as, someone who just gave information. And just imagine if you don't have executive level person in front of you, project manager come and get three different
Yeah.
proposals and send out someone's desk and said, hey, I think this is better, and why, who knows, and you lose the deal without knowing, and then you start asking this question, am I good enough? Maybe marketing doesn't do a good job giving me some valuable material. Maybe I don't have expertise. So all these doubts that could lead teams to burnout, and I know you talk a lot about this as well. So before we get into that, I want to ask you this:
Sure.
how should someone in service, industry, come and say, "Hey, yes, I understand it's discovery and asking some right questions and getting some commitment, but I'm really curious, how should we bring this mindset shift? What do we need to even do? Just imagine if someone is listening to this. We have some clients in real estate and constructions. This is really relevant to them. I want to send actually this clip to them right after this. So tell me, what do they need to do to differentiate themselves and be the choice?
Well, one is, I'll zip around a few things. One is you got to have a process. So if somebody says, "Hey, how does it work around here? What's your process? Step 1, step 2, step 3." We already covered
Mm-hmm.
that. So you got to have a process. The second piece of this, and this is more of a belief, it's more of a attitude, something to carry around, is that I am equal in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not less than. And that might sound simple, and maybe you've heard that before in some different forms, but I think that plagues more people and more firms than any other belief that I could help them overcome, because there's this immediate feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm in a sales pursuit, so now I'm less than. My buyer is now higher than me. They know more than me. They're making demands, they're telling me what they need, and I just have to rush around and do all that work.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of thinking of myself as the professional, the practitioner, the physician, whatever analogy you want to use, to be able to say, wait a minute, I need to know more. I need to understand why they're telling me this. Why are they telling me this now? Why are they not bringing up these other things? There's more to this story and this picture than maybe what they're originally telling me. So I think there's a mindset shift that has to happen. And along with that, it's also this like, wait a minute, I don't even know if I want this business. I know they're
Mm-hmm.
coming to me, or maybe I came to them. However, I came to it. But this process is to discover if there is a reason to do business, because there may not be for a lot of different
Yeah.
things, timing, money, whatever. I think those are two pieces that have to really be certainly worked on, coached in the sales process big time.
I'm completely with you. I think that's a skill set itself by itself. When you actually let go of a deal, you're saying, hey, this is not a fit. Even everything is right. I mean, the
Yeah.
money is there. It's just not a cultural fit for what we do. And many people argue that. But especially if you're smaller in an organization, and it could bring more trouble then benefit, if you will, because you hand it over to someone else for the implementation, and they're going to stay with you for the entirety of that contract. And just imagine if the experience is not good because maybe they gatekeep information or the relationship is really not there. So the gain is just a one-off transaction that might leave you with, bad reviews or very quick churn. Let me ask you one more follow-up actual question. That you were saying something interesting about basically service-based industries and what went wrong. I remember I was reading this at some point in my life. I don't know when. It was, I think, Sandler practice. It says, buyers lie. Is it Sandler or I'm mistaken?
Yeah, you got it.
The buyers liars or something like that along the same line, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Can we talk about some of these common lies that buyers actually throw at reps and we easily accept them and just play along with?
I love this one because it gets under people's skin in so many different ways, and some people don't want to think that somebody would be lying to them. So for
Yep.
some of us, this is a really hard discussion. For others
Yep.
of us, this is very easy to get our arms around. But if you don't like the word lie, then use mislead. But I think there's a subconscious and sometimes conscious piece to this where buyers know that if I do a couple of things, the other person will fall into a pattern. And as
Mhm.
human beings, we love patterns. I mean, we live by patterns. If you've been at the airport recently and you go through the TSA line, no matter where you are, and there's a longer line to the right and there's nobody in the left, everybody's in the right. Nobody wants to go to the line where no one's there. And so I think there's just so many of these patterns. And one of them that buyers know that if they do some things, the one that often works really well is being very friendly and time bound. So something like, Michael, we're really excited to be with you today. We're just so thrilled. You came highly recommended. We've heard so many great things. The work you do is incredible. It's amazing. Now I'm already feeling like emotionally excited
Yep.
to be into this conversation. And then they say something else like, oh, and we're about ready to make this decision. It's really imminent. It's super important for our company. We have to do this now. This is a big step for us. And they just keep doing that. And before you know it, we're emotionally into the mix. And when we get
Mhm.
emotionally into the mix and off of our process, like a physician, we're in it. And we're
Mhm.
in this sort of dance. Like if I just sweet talk you enough, and you fall for it, you'll give me all your information. And then I can either disappear, I can use that as leverage against you, I can stay with my current firm, I can do a lot of different things. But I don't need you anymore because I got your information. And they might end up buying, but what a horrible sales process to
Mhm.
be in. So the friendly buyer is dangerous, and because it plays on all of our emotions, we get excited about this. And I think there's other things that people can do, like saying, we'll make anything work. Money's not really a problem. It's not a factor here. Those are things that are just not real, and we all probably know them in our heart of hearts that it's not real. And we've seen the other side. They've ghosted us. Money was an issue. They weren't about ready to make a decision. All that stuff. But we get blinded. We get glamored by the words that people say. And if we don't have a process or a methodology to really fall back on, and certainly a coach, a leader, a sales leader, a outside firm to help guide us through this, these things can happen to us. And pipelines, a lot of people's pipelines, a lot of companies' pipelines are full of a lot of that kind of stuff.
And that's the worst thing, when you get that happy ear and you add it to your pipeline, and then you really just were stuck on it and say, hey, this is my forecast. This one will close. They said this, and that. But do you know this, and that? No, I don't. Do we have other stakeholders involved? Look, by the way, I'm not preaching because I made this mistake so many times. So everybody makes this mistake. I think what would be interesting is to really understand how to, even for this one specific challenge that we talk about, as buyers come in and some of them are really actually trained to do stuff, and we're not talking about procurement here, we're talking about even your actual even potentially champion. Let me tell a story before that, because it's good to always make yourself to look embarrassed. So one of the things I tend to sometimes do, I used to do a lot, but right now again I'm most probably more chill, what's to call it? right away. And that brings some tension. It gives you the reality check, but it might actually break the deal altogether because people tend to get tense when you call them on their BS. So how should we do this tactically so we don't piss them off, but we go about again our process? So we kind of like get into that same position. Hey, I know my thing, you know your thing. Let's just don't go in that route. Let's sit down like professionals and have a conversation.
I love this one. I think it's first of all, I say this to everybody, but you do have to be gutsy 5 seconds at a time. So there's going to be different moments in your conversations in your life where you're going to just have to have some guts. You're going to have to put the toes over the edge and jump in, because all of us have different parts of a sales conversation that are easier and harder. Some of us have an easier time talking about money. Others of us, money is a real hard spot. But this is at the beginning, let's stick with that friendly buyer, because that's sort of the one that I think gets everybody generally off base the most. We could talk about the angry buyer, but for most people, it's that version of a friendly, I'm excited, we're motivated to make a decision, let me pull my team together, the agreeable buyer, that kind of language. And if that's presented to you, I think you want to acknowledge that. I mean, there's no reason to be in a cross communication with somebody right away, but it's Michael, I really appreciate that. Look, I'm glad we're having this conversation today. Again, very neutral. It's very adult. It's not overly like, oh, thank you so much, I'm so glad. It's just more like, I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm glad we're having this conversation today. Look, if there's a reason for us to proceed further, let me take a bit of a step back and share with you what our process is here and how a first conversation goes. And then you can determine if that still makes sense for you or not, right? And sort of take that physician. And I use physician. We've trained a lot of physicians and they've allowed me to use that analogy, right? Is to take that physician approach. Like, I hear you and I'm glad you reached out, right? To the patient. You're saying this to your patient, but we have a process. So let me walk you through it. And if you still want to continue into that process, then you tell me. And if they say, yes, we do, then you have to say things like, here's who needs to be in that meeting, right? And that's where that's going to take some guts. Like, if we're going to have a meaningful first call and you know that you need the president of the company in that first call, I'm using that as a title, it could be anybody, or you need the chief marketing officer, you need whomever, you're going to have to say, look, for us to have a meaningful first conversation, we need to have the president of the company there besides yourself. We're going to need yourself and the chief marketing officer. We're going to need this, that, and the other thing. And here's how long we're going to have to meet for. Here's the kinds of things we'd want to talk about in that meeting. And I'm sure there's some things you'd want to talk about. What else would you want to hear from us? You know, and you're sort of mutually agreeing on a set of expectations about what's about ready to take place. But the interesting part about that is it's really your process. It's not theirs, it's yours, because you're the one with the prescription pad. And that's something that we have to really remember is like, wait a minute, who's got the prescription pad? Who's in charge? Am I the pilot or am I the passenger? And I think so many salespeople are the passenger of their pursuit, not the pilot.
Many people will hate us for this because they're going to say it's all about buyers. We have to walk their process, and that's fine. And I'm with you because I lost deals because of this. Or maybe they were not even deals. I wasted time on this. Someone junior gets on the call. You give out all the information. And to your point, we tend to get this feeling that we are obliged because maybe they said, hey, we are checking other competitors. By all means, if this is a real deal, I think you do your due diligence properly. Otherwise, it's just an exploratory conversation for you to gather information. And I remember I called it once and someone got really pissed. It's like, all the information you're asking because you're telling me my agenda does not work with anything you want to do. So you just want to ask all the questions.
Yeah.
You're telling me just pop up the platform, show it to me. All these things are available. Why do we waste each other's time? I can send it over. Here's the link you can access even without engaging me. Because to me, it sounds like education than anything else. I'm happy again have this conversation. If we can at least get to that respect level of saying, I'm here to educate myself, and then I give you everything you need. But I need that alignment up front. And to your point, this is part of your process too. Can we set a proper agenda? And you correct me. And if you have other ideas, and we see if there's an alignment. So having that fit, I think it could be really confirm at the beginning of the conversation, to your point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just think that's such an important part is like we're acknowledging that buyers have they have the right to do a lot of different things. They have the right to price shop. They have a right to ask all kinds of questions, but so do we. Like we also have the right, no matter what industry you're in, you have the right to have anybody you want in the room. I mean,
Mhm.
if your process says we get decisions when we have the chief marketing officer in the room, then you need to have the CMO in the room. Like, why are we settling for someone else that's selling on our behalf, right? So we have to,
Mhm.
that's where like understanding where and how did these opportunities get into our pipeline, and is that the
Yeah.
right process, and what do we require on our side is so important to know before we really start entering into some of these sales conversations. And that changes over time. I mean, I completely get that. So for those of you that have a process,
Mhm.
it may be time to just dust it off and think about, is that still where we want to go? Because what you sold 15, 20, 30 years ago, the deal sizes are most likely smaller. The
Mhm.
buying teams have changed, all those kinds of factors as well. It's more complex for sure.
That's absolutely correct. And some people might argue and say, "Hey, if you're a large organization, you define your ICPs and all that stuff." I would argue that yes, but early on, as early stage startup, we wanted everyone. Honestly, we just wanted to disqualify some of the hypotheses we had, so we were open to it. Just have a conversation with us. But at some point, when you have real case studies, when you have use cases that are proven, then you need to be careful because just imagine you are a larger organization for the sake of our audience. You acquire companies, you have channel partners, you start releasing new functionalities or even complete set of solutions.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai.
When you said you as a seller should be in the same level as the buyer, you mentioned doctors. I want to challenge that a little bit, and I tell you what. When doctors see someone, they have the right to ask the questions and lead basically that meeting. The difference is, just imagine if someone just got into sales. You're 2 years in, you're a junior, you have no idea what you're talking about with the CTO. You don't understand the world. And yes, you can get trained. The age gap itself is a natural, problem right there. You're getting on a call, hey, you're 20 years old. I'm 60. I've been running my business for 30 odd years. What are you telling me, kid? So how should this, especially younger generation sellers, position themselves as trusted advisors? So automatically when someone gets on a call, because as buyers, I even myself, when I go on a call with someone and I know it's a junior, I'm gonna say, oh my god, I'm not gonna get anything out of this meeting. It's just a process. SDR book a call with an AE. AE comes, has no idea about product, no decision power. So I'm gonna go in that loop.
I
So
know. I know. I
how
know.
should we position ourselves if junior reps, again, someone has a fresh graduate, team of 20, 30, 50? What
Yeah.
should I tell them? So hey, you're in that level with the buyer. Yes, we educate you, we train you, but how?
It makes me think of one of my favorite movies, and it's an old reference, so I don't even know if anyone will remember it, but he's a phenomenal actor, and it's The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
And there's a line in there, you'd have to see the movie, but the whole idea was he was young and he was trying to get experience, and he was interviewing for all these jobs, and he didn't have experience, but you needed experience to get a job. So he said, how am I supposed to get a job to get experience if I need experience to get a job? And it's sort of the irony too of selling. How do I ever get any experience? What am I supposed to wait until I'm older? to be able to sell something? No. Or to be able to be credible? No. I think what makes people attractive and what makes people credible is that they're not selling for their reasons. They're not trying to convince anybody to do anything. In fact, what they're trying to do, no matter what age you are, is to better understand why somebody's coming to us in the first place. And if I can just follow a process and say, look, here's how a first meeting works, and here's the kinds of questions that we're going to have, and I need to know more, that's my role. That's a very attractive thing versus somebody who's coming in to say, hey, let me tell you all the reasons or the 59 reasons why you should buy from me. It's like very off-putting. And I think sometimes when we're younger, we have a propensity to do more of the convincing as a way to combat our age. And if we can find a way to put that to the side somehow and say, I'm actually doing a better job if I embrace that I don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's actually somebody who has the highest self-esteem, highest self-worth individual, no matter age, that can say, I've done a lot of things, but I don't have all the answers. Those are the people you want to be around. And that's the kind of salesperson you want to be. I've done a lot of things. I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot, but I don't have all the answers. I certainly find myself learning every single day. I'm faced with the same situations that I'm describing. The friendly buyer, that happens to us, that happens to me, so I think that idea of being wildly curious and running a process is how you really establish credibility.
I really love that, because to me it's very practical. Simply just be confident about things that you don't know and just call it. Like, I don't know, I'll get back to you on this. I know many might say, hey, you lose the deal because you don't have that information. If it's a strategic,
Yeah.
deal, if you're not talking about transactional 500,000, 10,000 deals, people need to take their time to make those decisions. It doesn't happen overnight. And I don't think that breaks a deal if you say, hey, I don't know this part, I'll get back to you. And I think that what I'm getting at, based on what you're sharing, I don't want to say it's anyone's fault. I think it's the misconception that we always say, hey, you as a seller, take no for an answer. I heard this in 2025, a very prestigious event. It was for B2B SaaS. It was like a hiring sort of, event. And there were a lot of junior people, some of them never been in sales. And I heard this from a sales leader on stage, basically shouting and roaring and saying, I want people who take no for an answer. They don't take no for an answer. So you approach to get, and I think that will send a wrong message to sellers, especially when they just started, never experienced it, is that your neck is on the line. This is a type of expectation of leadership that you push, and you need to have commission breath, otherwise you're gone. So we ruin someone's career early on by transferring something wrong. And to me, it's the second topic I wanted to open up, is basically coaching the coach. So one of the major themes that we see right now, many companies who work with us or they get into this conversation with us, is that my sales managers were high-performing reps. We just, give them a management seat. They're leading, but we see that the coaching is pretty much non-existent, and then they can kind of like hide behind the fact that I don't have the bandwidth. But in reality, they don't have the skill set or passion to actually coach. So I wanted to see if this is the same thing. We cannot generalize, but I'm just really curious if in other industries, you guys notice the same challenges as well.
We could do a whole hour on sales leadership and sales management and coaching, because I think that is a huge blind spot for every single company that exists out there. Every salesman, every company we've ever worked with, and I would say for all my Sandler colleagues around the world, I bet they would say the same thing if we polled the audience. They would say that people have become what you just said. They've become sales leaders because they've done a lot in their career, or they've shown some success, or they got on big accounts, and they've had leadership training, right? Because companies love to check the box on leadership training. But what they haven't had is sales leadership training. Like, how do you coach somebody and help them achieve their plan? See, I think in coaching, we have it sort of backwards, right? Because we're trying to hold somebody accountable. And if you, as a leader of a company out there, have people that are holding managers that are trying to hold people accountable to your number or to the manager's number, you're doing it wrong.
It's like a structural problem, the way we kind of like compensate people, or it really comes through the top, and the culture of coaching that is pretty much non-existent in most companies.
It's so true. There is no coaching. I mean, ask my leaders of my clients. Instead of feedback, I want them to really embrace, and leaders embrace this word, hear me, of observation. Not feedback, but observation. So when I say to them, so when you were out in the field last week, share with me some observations of your people. Well, I wasn't in the field last week. Okay, so that's problem one. But let's pretend they were out in the field, right? So like, what were you observing of your people? Yeah, how are you helping through observation, not feedback, right? Because people bristle when somebody says to you, "Hey, Michael, or hey, Haley, I really want to give you some feedback." It's like brace for impact.
Yep.
I just don't care who you are. Nobody likes that statement. So instead of saying, "Hey, Haley, can I share with you a couple of observations from our week together last week?" Totally different conversation. Now I'm open, and it's like, I think managers and leaders miss that their job is to be with their people. That is your number one job. Your paperwork, your timesheets, your expense reports, the desk stuff. If you're doing that the majority of the time, again, you're doing it wrong, because you got to be with your people. And people's number one complaint when they leave a company is that my boss didn't add any value. And you know why? Because the boss wasn't providing observations and coaching along the way. We waited until there was a performance review and then lambasted somebody with feedback that happened 6-8 months ago. Why weren't we in the moment with our team?
That's absolutely correct. And I want to add this to another question, because you had a very interesting post and you said something along the line of, I don't know, can I be more interesting? I want to tie this actually, instead of sellers, to managers who are listening to this. Can they be more interesting?
I know it's, I say to people all the time, and it's to anybody really, it doesn't matter what your title or your role is be interested and interesting. And as a manager and a leader, I think we do a lot of selling for our reasons. We're just like salespeople. We love to sell for our reasons. We love to get in a coaching meeting and tell people exactly how we would do it. And guess what? It's just like kids with their parents. Don't you love it when mom or dad comes in and says, "Hey son, hey daughter, here's what I'd love to, let me tell you how I would do it." And the whole time we're sitting there going, "Yeah, I would do it differently," right? And so are your people at your companies. So what you want to do is be more interesting through observation. Imagine getting up in front of your people and saying, "Hey everybody, I went on 10 sales calls last week. And you know what my number one observation is? We're talking too much. Let's talk about that." That's a way to be an interesting leader. "Hey, everybody, I listened to 25 calls. And what I'm picking up is we have a hesitancy to talk about money. Why is that? Let's work on that." That's value. And that's what people are missing. They're craving that, by the way. Your people want that. They need that. That's what's going to help somebody be successful. I mean, our number one job as leaders is to help somebody be successful either here with us or somewhere else.
Look, this has been great. I want to ask some quick questions and I need quick answers. So,
Boy,
yeah, just wrap it up.
okay. Rapid fire.
There you go. So what personal learning has helped you the most in becoming a better sales leader and a coach?
For me, what has helped me the most is being with my clients. Honestly, it sounds stupid, but it's true, because I have learned so much from what I see, how they operate. I see how they lead their teams. I see the struggles that they go through, and I didn't know what I was doing when I started this. I think everybody can say that on some level. You look back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago in your career, and you say, "I didn't know anything." And I really didn't. And I've gotten some hard observations from my clients over the years. I certainly, in working for a family business, have gotten some hard observations from my boss, my CEO, who also happens to play the same very impactful role in my life as my father, right? So I've learned the most from my clients and my dad. My dad is my inspiration. So I've learned so much.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, finish this sentence. Sales leaders would be 10x more effective if they just.
Got out of their own way.
Can you expand on it? This is interesting.
If they stopped letting ego drive their decisions and their behavior.
What was your most painful sales loss?
My most painful sales loss was a company that was a very large organization, and they came to us with some very solvable sales challenges. And we knew that there was a competitor that had already been in the mix, right? I mean, this is like what we teach, right? Like, get that on the table, deal with that, deal with the decision maker who doesn't want you to get the business, deal with the headwinds, and we made it all the way. I mean, we got to the brink, and we thought we had had all the conversations and all the things, and we played out all the different scenarios, but we ultimately didn't get the business for the reason that we thought we weren't going to get the business in the sales process, which was they stayed with their current firm. And it was tough because it was probably an 8-month ordeal, and
Wow. That's painful.
it's painful, and we learned a lot of lessons, and I think what's hard about that is nothing has changed at the company either, because we know people that are there, and so it's a hard one for all of us.
We've all been there if we ever didn't get into selling enterprise. Let me ask you this. My previous guest on the show, Lawrence O'Connor, is very active on LinkedIn in the space of enablement, and he asked you, what is the best way to make our sales leaders, managers, more strategic than tactical?
I still think I'm going to go back to they have to be in the field observing their people so we can make changes to how we need to act different, therefore better. You can't make a behavioral change unless you've observed what those behaviors are. And I think sometimes we focus so much on, okay, we've got a new strategy. Okay, we've got a new process. Okay, we've got some new culture stuff. And nobody's spent any time in the field with customers, prospects, people observing any of these things. And so I go back to that word observations. I just think it's so critical.
We're stuck on data and, lagging indicators, and we forget that people are actually running the show.
Absolutely.
Our next guest is Jordan Timothy. He's the head of revenue enablement at SEMrush. Do you have any question for him?
I would ask him, in line with what I just said, is what's his number one observation of his people right now? What's one thing they could do better?
I love it. My last question.
Sure.
Name of our company is Sell with the Spend. Name of this podcast is Sell with the Spend. And that was the first question they asked me when I got into tech sales many years back. For some people, it's still irrelevant. For so many, it's irrelevant and they hate it. So hate it or love it. I want you to finish this sentence. Sell me this what right now in today's market?
Sell me this reason to do business together.
I love it.
Or not.
Or not. Like, that's a good one. Or not.
Yes. If I had it, I would just title it, I think, or not. That would be the title. Maybe no. I don't know.
I love that. This is really cool. All right. Look, Ailey, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
I'm glad we find this opportunity to have this again talk. If someone wants to reach out to you, can they and how?
Absolutely. They can call me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll connect them up, but sure. And I'd love to hear too, successes people are having and observations people are making. That's the good stuff that makes me happy.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, bye for now.